this before we ran out of time. We're not going to run out of time. We should be good. All right, well, once again, new seating chart. Here's the things we're focusing on. Staying facing forward. Not interacting with other people across the room, Kyle. Just because he gets up to get something doesn't mean you make faces. Harlan, don't get out of your seat again, buddy. If you need something, please raise your hand and let me know, and I'll get it for you because you're a distraction. So are we not clear on me having somebody come to you? You. Put your paper down. We're not interacting. We need to take things seriously. All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. Today's notes. This first part, you don't have to write. Quick recap. We actually just recapped it really, but we're going to recap it again. We need to remember the definition of alternate interior angles. And if the lines are parallel, then those angles will be congruent. So what we learned, the postulate was when two lines are parallel, they're crossed by a transversal, then there's going to be a special relationship between these 5 angle pairs, right? So these 5 angle pairs, we know if the lines are parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent. We know if the lines are parallel, then alternate exterior angles are congruent. You don't have to write this, we're just paying attention right now, okay? This is stuff we've been talking about. This is what our warm-up was over, right? But the form is kind of what I want you to be focused on now. We're saying if they're parallel, these angles were congruent, right? If they're parallel, the corresponding angles are congruent. If the lines are parallel, then these angles are supplementary. So why am I repeating myself? Because today's lesson, we're going to be kind of using the opposite of that rule. Instead of saying if the lines are parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent, we're going to say if the alternate interior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So it's the same rule, but we're swapping it. It works both ways, right? If alternate exterior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. And that's actually what we have here, right? So it's the same, basically the same lesson, we're just using the opposite way. It's like when you work the problem backwards in middle school, right? That was one of your strategies for solving a word problem, working it backwards. We're kind of working it backwards. Corey? You're going to write what I have underlined up there. Yes, thank you. So the property to prove angles congruent can be used to prove lines are parallel. So basically we're reversing that if-then statement. Where before we said if they're parallel, then the angles are whatever. Now we're saying if the angles are congruent or supplementary, depending on what they are, then the lines are parallel. So now we're not proving the angles have a special relationship. We're proving that the lines are parallel. Anthony, you're supposed to be writing this, buddy. I do still have some people struggling with the interior and exterior angles, so real quick, I want to remind you again what that means. Because everything is based on, are both the angles interior? Are both the angles exterior? Or are they one of each, right? I keep harping on that. And I think most people are getting it, but I think some people are still struggling with what does it mean, interior of what, right? And we have talked about it, but you're looking at interior means in between the lines, right? So we have 2 lines crossed by a transversal. So 3, 4, 5, and 6, they're in between these 2 lines, right? So that's what we mean when we mean interior, in between the lines. So in for interior, in for in between the lines. Exterior means on the outside of either of those lines. Okay, so how are we going to use this? So which lines or segments are parallel? We're going to justify our answer. These are the exact same directions from the first 10 problems on your worksheet, so they're going to be pretty much the same kind of problems, okay? So So this is a little trickier though because there are 4 lines there, right? For all of these angles, we need 2 lines and 1 transversal. So you got to figure out which lines are making the angles we're looking at, right? Which lines are creating the angles. So we have line E and line F in the first example, line X and line Y. But the only 2 angles that we know anything about have these measures here, right? So which lines are making those angles? B is 1. What's the other 2? X and Y, right? So F is not a factor, right? F should not be anywhere in our answer, right? So our question is, if this is the transversal and these are the 2 lines, are X and Y parallel, and how would we know? So we want to know which lines and segments are parallel in each of these problems, right? So we're only looking at X, Y, and E, so F is not going to be in our answer, right? So we're not considering that at all, right? Now, how would we know that X and Y are parallel? No, that line and that line are going the same way, but they're going to eventually cross, right? Well, they go in the same direction. Yeah, but we don't know that for sure. It could be just barely slanted, right? We only know it if it's marked parallel or if we can prove it with one of these rules, right? So if there's a special relationship between these 2 angles, those equal 180, right? And so that means they're supplementary. What kind of angle pair are those?
Same side. Yeah, same side here.
Yes. So what we're saying is, if these 2 angles are supplementary, if these same side interior angles are supplementary, then line X and line Y are parallel. Line X and line Y are parallel. Same side interior angles are supplementary. So 110 plus 70 equals 180. 110 plus 70 equals 180. And that is the definition of supplementary, right? You add the 2 angles together and they equal 180. So now we can say that those 2 lines that are being crossed by line E are parallel lines. Not all of them. The last one you're going to write equations. So the first ones are going to be like these first 4 examples, and the ones in some of the last 5 or 6 on the back page are going to be writing equations. So we'll talk about those in a minute. Okay, example 2. So we got a bunch of lines here, right? A bunch of segments. We got a diagonal here. These aren't even lines, they're arrays. So the question is, first, we're looking at what angles are marked with information. Say it again. There are 2 angles that are marked congruent. How are they marked congruent, Chris? Those little arcs, right? If angles have the same number of arcs, that's the statement that they're congruent. So they're telling us that these 2 angles are congruent. Now, if this is a special angle pair and they're congruent, then we're going to know the 2 lines that are being crossed by the transversal are parallel, right? So, these 2 angles are congruent. What kind of angles are they? They are corresponding. One interior, one exterior. So now, which angles does it prove are parallel? Which lines does it prove are parallel? Not X, Y. Y is not part of that angle, right? Yeah, you got to look which lines are making the angle. Line E and line X, line F and line X. So the ones that are parallel are going to be E and F, and these are rays, so we're going to write ray E and ray F are parallel. Corresponding angles are congruent. Yes, you may use the congruent symbol. I can't type it on my keyboard, but if you've forgotten what it is, it looks like this. So if you'd rather use that symbol than the word congruent, you may. All right, your example 3 and my example 3 don't look the same. If I doctored mine up, I'm going to put up what yours looks like. Maybe. So yours look like 2 triangles, right? So just like on yesterday's assignment, sometimes if you draw the lines, kind of enhance that diagram a little bit, it makes more sense. So yours right now looks like this, right? 2 triangles. But these 2 triangles don't look like anything that we learned about proving angles have a special relationship or proving that lines have a special relationship. I thought I just pasted it on there. Let's see if I did. Oh, there it is right there. Nope, there it is right there. Okay, so this is what yours looks like. I went ahead and drew lines through the lines that make the angles and the triangles, right? So this angle and this angle, they just look like 2 angles and triangles here. But these segments are part of a greater line, like a part of a line. So if I draw that line through DE, if I draw that line through BC, if I draw a line through AE, it becomes a little bit more apparent that we may be able to use these rules and lines for proving angles are congruent or supplementary, and now proving that lines are parallel. Does that make sense? So you're going to go ahead and draw these lines to your figure. So you're going to go ahead and draw a line through EE. You're going to go ahead and draw a line through CB. You're going to go ahead and draw a line through EA. Leo, I don't mind a little doodling, but a full-blown, we're going to kind of pause on that one. Did you already draw lines through there? Great. All right, perfect. So now we have lines drawn through there. It's a little bit more like what we've been working through with. With those lines drawn, do you know what kind of angles are both marked at 50 degrees? Yeah. So they are acute angles, but that doesn't help us. They're not vertical.
Economical.
What kind of angle pair? Chris?
No. Oh, the first one.
Yes, corresponding. Doesn't have the word interior exterior in it because one is interior and one is exterior. So the only one that's like that, right? The only one that's like that is corresponding angles. Are they congruent?
So what about the line?
Yes. Which one?
The AB, right?
We don't need it. It's not part of our problem. It's part of the triangle, but it's not part of our problem, right? We're looking at the 50.
Oh.
So the 50 and 50 means they're congruent. Chris said they're corresponding, which is right. If corresponding angles are congruent, then we can prove that the lines are parallel. So that's what we're doing. So this for the segment before I drew a line through it, so that's what we're going to do. Segment EB, or maybe I said DE, and segment BC are parallel because corresponding angles are congruent. That's our proof. Kyle, are you done writing this? Because I'm getting ready to move on. Kyle, you writing this?
I can't see. Is there a sign for parallel?
Yeah. It's the 2 vertical lines, remember?
2 vertical. That's right.
I can't type it on. Well, maybe I can, but I didn't.
Parallel corresponding.
So look at example 4 when you're done with writing example 3. Which 2 angles should we be focused on? And of those 2 angles that we're focused on, which 3 lines create those angles? Which 3 lines create those angles? Don't talk about it, just look at it. Don't talk about it, just look at it. Yeah, you and Troy are going to talk tomorrow.
These are going on back there.
kind of comments to yourself, okay? All right. So which angles do you think we're looking at? Which angles do you think we're looking at?
Maybe more than
Yes. How do you know it's congruent?
because
How do we know they're congruent? Because of the arc, right? So one arc and one arc. So here and here. Oh, Tisha. That's okay for today, but this is your sheet for tomorrow, okay? So these are the angles we're looking at. Which three lines make these angles? Lee, which three lines make these angles we're focused on in example 4? Here's the angle. Which two lines make this angle? B and X, that's right. And which two lines make this angle? Dominic? F and X. So the angles, the lines that we're looking at are E, F, and X. We don't need Y, right? It's not creating these angles. So now, these two lines are being crossed. This is the transversal here, right? So what kind of angles are these two congruent angles? We're always thinking, where are they located? Alternate interior. They're both interior angles and they're opposite sides of that transversal. So these are alternate interior angles. What's the relationship if these lines are parallel? What would they would be what? They'd be congruent. And since they are congruent, now we can say that line E is parallel to line F. Alternate interior angles are congruent. This is the transversal up here. Are y'all having these? All right, we're going to go to example 5 and 6. So now the question is, what does the value of X have to be for line A to be parallel to line B? Right? So we're still looking at a pair of angles. We're looking for them to be a special angle pair that we've learned about. There's a certain relationship between those two angles. And I don't know what it is. Not yet. How do we find what X should be in order for these two lines to be parallel? Right? So first we're going to start with the only two angles that have a measure are these two, right? What kind of angles are these? What kind of angles are these, Sejal? Same side interior. Very good. What do we know about same side interior angles? Jamari? They're supplementary. What does it mean to be supplementary? What, 180? Just 180? Neither one of those is 180. Neither one. What do you have to do to get them to equal 180? Add them. There you go. If you add two angles together and they equal 180, they're supplementary. So what we're saying is, if we add these two together, this is equal to 180, then whatever value of X we get is the value of X that will make those lines parallel. So same side interior angles are supplementary. That's how we know what to do. Then we write our equation. Combine our like terms. 2x plus 120 equals 180. Subtract 120 from both sides. 2 times x equals 60. divide both sides by 2, and x equals 30. So if x is 29, these two lines would not be parallel. If x is 31, these two lines would not be parallel because they would not equal 180. Does that make sense, Andre? That makes sense, Molly? So if you're through writing example 5, look at example 6. We only have 2 angles marked with a measure, right? What kind of angles are those? They're created by 2 lines and a transversal. Okay, 2 people blurted out. Good news, you were both right. Well, let's try not to blurt out. Okay, Carlin? Corresponding. Now, let's try to raise our hand and be called on. Yes, corresponding. So, one interior, one exterior. One in between the lines, one outside of the lines. Corresponding doesn't have the word interior, exterior in it, right? So, what do we know about corresponding interior angles if A and B were parallel? Carlin?
Congruent.
They would be congruent. What does it mean to be congruent, Chris? They equal each other or their measures are equal. So we could write an equation where we set them equal to one another. So corresponding angles are congruent. And we're going to set each angle equal to one another. So whatever value of W, or whatever the solution is for W, that's the value that you can plug in to make lines A and B be parallel lines. If it's not that value, they would not be. To solve the equation, we're going to undo the subtracting by adding 2 to both sides. So now we have 57 equals 3 times W. We're going to divide both sides by 3. Now we know when W equals 19, line A and line B are parallel. If W equals 18.9, they're not parallel. If equals 19.1, they're not parallel. Right? It's exactly the same measure. Any questions?
Yes, Janice, a bit.
You may. Carlin?
Don't you kind of look like this one?
It is all on there. Lyndon? 17 and 18?
Number 6.
So 17 and 18 are critical thinking questions. 17 says for question number 16, find a value of x that makes lines U and V intersect. That means they would not be parallel. Okay? So make yourself a note. Can't be parallel. If they're parallel, they don't intersect. If they're not parallel, they eventually would intersect. So you find out what value needs to be for them to be parallel, and then you need to give a different value. Right?
I don't understand that. Why doesn't it change how I write?
So remember, this one's a little different. You're going to extend your line, right?
And they like it pretty much.
Just because sometimes they are, right? So we don't have to use the middle line. We can use the top line and the bottom line.
Is that your trick?
It's not a trick. Just you need to know that sometimes your angles may be created by not 2 lines that are directly connected. There might be a line in between them. That's okay. I want you to try it, and then we'll work on Friday. Kyle?
I don't see a sign for Friday.
There is one.
For what day?
Sorry?
For what? On the 18th?
It's due the 18th. Yep. It says note 3 days. It's not going to be in your to-do pile because the date wrong here. It's going to go to your assignment.
But then you weren't graded.
I have, that's what I was telling you. I had the date wrong, so.
Click submit assignment, and then click the scanner.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell
Yeah. Anthony, I don't understand that. I tried to let you go for a second thinking you would curb your own behavior, and you did not.
I told him the correct steps that I know.
You were not supposed to do that, buddy. You're disrupting
So you
me right
want to
now.
just fail on his own behalf.
I want you to not be disruptive and let me talk.
You didn't tell him the correct steps.
So I'm going to be talking to you after class.
Okay.
All right. You have almost 10 minutes. You should be working on the worksheet. Minutes and makers, and then drop your phones back in your backpack. But I want us to be working silently. That means not even talking to yourself. Kyle, don't face that way to scan your stuff. Face back this way. Good. We did writing things there. Oh, we did have something. Good. Okay. So, have you done everything except for 17 and 18? Yeah, so I don't want you to do that while we're taking notes. I want you to follow along with us. I don't want you to start the assignment until I give you permission to do that, all right? I understand. But that's not how I want you to do it. I want you to wait until it's time when I give you permission to start the assignment. Because you're not focused on the notes, you might miss something, all right? I don't have anybody here that's getting a perfect score on everything. If I had somebody who's getting a perfect score on everything, I might give you a little bit of leeway on that. But I want you to pay attention to our notes. Maybe somebody asked a question that you need to know the answer to. When you're trying to squeeze in the worksheet while we're doing the notes, you're not hearing all the fine tuning we do. All right? So don't do that. Chris? Number one, just like the ones, you're just going to give the value of that angle that would make the lines parallel, and you're going to tell me why it being that bad, what kind of angle pairs they are. So it looks just like our 1 through 4 example, because we're going to give the value to the angle. No, we may not. It's going to be working on your worksheet. We're not going outside the gym. No, Kyle. Parallel corresponding, right? Parallel is line to parallel, angles and corresponding. Yes, they are corresponding angles. It's parallel corresponding angles. So what would make the corresponding angles, what does it have to be in order to be parallel? Yeah, it's the same. So what angle does that have? What meaning does that have to be? Yeah, what is it? Right. So you're going to put 130 there. You're going to tell me corresponding angles are congruent. Really? Well, yeah. So we'll do number one together. Seems to be everybody is overwhelmed, I think, because it's got a little bit different notation here. So let's look at number one. Everybody look at number one. Anthony, look at number one.
I already completed it.
I still want you looking at number one, buddy. Okay, so the question, directions to architecture indicate the angle that makes lines going to be parallel. Well, these angles that are indicated with a question mark and 130 degrees. How is that their corresponding angles? And we know that these lines are parallel, these corresponding angles would be what? Congruent or complementary?
Congruent.
Congruent. To be congruent, it means they have the same measure. So if this one is 130, then this one is 130. And our justification is corresponding angles are congruent. Yes. It depends on what angle you're looking at, right?
What did that thing?
Oh, no, you do the angle pair. And then you tell me the supplementary. So if you think the reason was there's a supplementary, you would know the supplementary is the same side interior. You'd have, you have to make sure the angles add up to 180. Sorry? Yeah, just the primary answer. So you're going to tell me corresponding angles are congruent, right? And here you're going to tell me alternate angles are congruent if you gave the same measure, right? And here you're going to tell me, well, time period, you're going to tell me what kind of angles those are. Tell me already, what kind of angles are those? Anthony, please stay when the bell rings.
Why was it?
I don't know why, buddy. That's what I'm asking myself. It wasn't Michaela. It wasn't Stasia. It wasn't Misha.
What do you think I did?
I know. I don't know exactly.
Why didn't you hit the test? I don't know what to tell you.
Then why did you tell me because I understood it?
I just wanted to know the justification.
Okay.
Why we can't all be.
So what kind of angle? Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, I got a little box on it. What does that little box beside me?
It's not.
90 degrees. That's right. That's right.